Today I will show you a drama, horror, mystery film from 2021, titled Hypnotic. A woman in an office building is trying to reach a detective. She is clearly disturbed. She walks through the box offices as if paranoid. She gets into an elevator and stands with her back to the wall, terrified of someone or something. She receives a call, an unknown number. Thinking it might be the detective, she answers and a man tells her, "Andrea, this is how the world ends." The elevator stops. Her attempts to get out are futile. High-pitched screeching sound fills her head. Suddenly it feels like the walls are closing in on her and she gets crushed. Jen visits her friend, Gina, to whom she gives a dead plant for her housewarming party. Gina reveals the bad news. Brian is here, her ex-fiancé. She tells Gina she'll have a glass of wine and then everything will be fine. Inside, the two notice each other and Scotty, Gina's husband, apologizes, saying he didn't know Jen was coming. Gina introduces Jen to Dr. Colin Mead. She tells her that Colin is a magical therapist and she had a great experience with him. Later, at the table, they talk about their jobs. It turns out that Brian and Jen are both software engineers, but Jen isn't working right now. Out of habit, Jen stops Brian from eating some snacks. She is sure there is sesame in them and Brian is allergic to them. Jen is slightly drunk when Collins approaches her and leaves her his credentials, in case she's interested. As Jen waits for her Uber, Brian tells her that he thinks about her all the time and misses her. Jen was the catalyst for their breakup. She just wants him to stay away from her. He still offers to take her home. She thinks it's a bad idea, but it's just a ride. In the morning, it turns out, they had a good nap together. She meets with Gina at a coffee shop and tells her all the details. Jen is just unhappy with her life and Gina once again suggests a visit to Dr. Collins. Jen agrees to do it once. In Collins' waiting room, a woman leaves his office and tells Jen that she should have seen her when she started. She praises Collins to the skies. In his office, he's glad she decided to come in. Jen tells him about her problems. She doesn't feel like doing anything around the house or outside. Maybe she should cut back on the alcohol. He tells her that bad habits come from deeper issues. There is always a root cause. He asks her to tell him more about Brian. Jen was happy with him, but she had a miscarriage, after which she just could not get her life together and broke off her engagement to Brian. Collins suggests hypnotherapy, an excellent remedy for people who have suffered trauma. Jen resists it. But when he asks her what she wants, she replies that she wants to be happy. He leans into her and asks her to let him help her. The hypnotherapy begins with her concentrating on the flickering light. Some gentle words from Collins get her to relax and imagine a forest with chirping birds. She wakes up with the room lit up with no recollection of what happened in the last hour. Collins tells her that she did well. 3 months later, Jen has gotten a job at a prestigious firm. She tells Gina that she visits Collins once a week and that she is doing much better. She is happy. Later, she dreams of intimacy with Collins, which causes her to wake up confused. Jen runs into Collins at a mall. He notes that they have not seen each other in weeks, and asks her if she's avoiding him. She shrugs it off as being busy. He asks her out for a catch-up coffee. They have a pleasant chit-chat, and Jen tells him what she's been up to lately. She notices that he meets his clients but does not tell much about himself. He opens up about his life, about a woman he loved very much, Amy, and that Jen's habits are similar to hers. Collins advises Jen to invite Brian to her house to talk about everything. It would be a big step in her life. In the parking lot, she receives a message from Brian that he will be at her place for dinner. She gets a call from unknown number. After picking up, it's like she's not herself. She snaps out of it at her house. At her table having a meal, she hears noises coming from the bathroom. It's Brian choking. She injects him with his stimulant and calls the ambulance. They go to the hospital and the doctors say that he will be all right. Gina comforts her, saying it's not her fault. Jen just feels uneasy because she doesn't remember anything. She has a session with Collins. She tells him about not remembering a thing and that she feels responsible for Brian being hospitalized. She says it felt similar to the hypnosis he is performing on her. Jen has another dream about her and Collins. She gets a glass of water and looks at the receipt from last night. Sesame oil. She has a flashback of answering the call that said, "Jennifer, carry the fire." She remembers all the lost time and her adding sesame oil to the salad. Jen decides to take a closer look at Collins to find out who he really is and what the hypnosis is used for. She finds out that another patient, Andrea, had filed a restraining order against the therapist. She tells Gina about it, but she thinks nothing of it. Jen shows her more evidence, like the background check she ran on him. There is nothing on the man. It's like he was a ghost until 6 months ago. Andrea had died of a heart attack 3 days after filing a restraining order against Collins. She even shows the receipt with sesame oil, and Gina finally believes her. They visit Detective Wade. Since he was the detective on Andrea's case, they question him about her and say they are experiencing something similar. Wade tells them that he got nowhere with her case. When he approached Collins, they had to call off the investigation on the same day. One of the senior officers had also used Collins' services and had probably been hypnotized. He shows her the surveillance footage from the elevator. It was all in her head and started right after the call. The best advice Wade can give them is to find a new therapist, because you cannot prove you have been hypnotized. Outside, Gina confesses that she was also hypnotized so she would not be afraid of spiders. When Jen parts ways with Gina, she calls Collins for an appointment and decides to record her session with him. The woman who had previously praised Collins leaves distraught. To hide why she's here, she asks him to help her with hypnosis to forget her worries about Brian being in hospital. Collins agrees, but suspects something is wrong. Meanwhile, Detective Wade is restless. He decides to go through all the hypnosis evidence they have at the precinct and notices a similarity: all the women look alike. After her session, Jen listens to the recording. Collins immediately found out that he was being recorded and also found out everything she and Gina knew about him. What seems odd is that he ends up calling her my love. Jen is distressed and calls Gina, who is in the car with her husband, expecting an urgent call from someone else. Jen urges her to turn back home, but the signal is cut off. Gina gets another call, she answers and it's Collins. He says the magic words and she starts hallucinating that there is a giant spider crawling on her. She asks Scott to get the spider off of her, but it's all in her head. Gina keeps screaming to get rid of the spider as it approaches her neck. In the process, she does not pay attention to the road and gets into an accident. Collins is enjoying a scotch with classical music in his office when Wade comes by. He tells Collins that Gina and her husband died in a car accident. Collins acts surprised. Wade goes on to tell him about the pattern of deaths among his hypnotized patients, doubting that it is a coincidence. As he talks, he manages to grab his spoon to get his fingerprint sample. Before Wade leaves, Collins jokingly offers him a hypnotherapy session. He knows Wade can't prove anything. Later, Wade visits Jen. She tells him about the recording and about Collins following her. He tells her to lay low for now while he gathers more information on Collins. As Wade leaves, he notes that he will call her in the morning. Moments later, there is a knock at the door. She thinks maybe Wade forgot something, but no, it's Collins. She tries to close the door, but he yanks it open with force. As she tries to escape, he yells at her to stop and she freezes, unable to move. Collins tells her he just wants to talk to her and wants to know what did he do that she distrusts him. He also tells her that Gina and Brian got in the way of her dreams and now it's Wade he's going to be taken care of. He'll see her soon and he tells her to relax, which makes her able to move again. She tries to reach Wade but his phone is dead. While looking at TV he hears a noise. He grabs his gun to investigate. Checking his bathroom, bedroom and even the closet, he relaxes and goes back to watching TV. Someone appears from under his sink and slowly crawls out. It's one of Collins' patients. She stabs Wade in the arm and slashes his stomach, jumping on him and even biting him. Wade manages to throw her off and finish her with a box. That's why you turn on your phone after you charge it. Jen visits Wade in the hospital and asks him to find a hypnotist at the station who can make her recall her sessions with Collins. Later, Jen has a session with Stella, also a hypnotherapist. Let us just say Jen has some trust issues with the profession. She nevertheless agrees to hypnosis if Stella can get any information about her sessions with Collins. Let the world around you slow down. Stella asks her what she remembers. When she suddenly gasps for air, Stella tries to bring her back. Jen remembers a house and inside Collins giving her a bracelet that says March 6th, then Stella brings her back. She explains to Jen that Collins has put a failsafe on what they are doing so that no one can get into her memory. She suggests placing a counter trigger inside her that might help her against Collins' control over her. Today is the 6th of March. Jen searches for the address she saw in her memory and finds some documents about the CIA, where patients are implanted with false memories, effectively mind control. Jen informs Wade of her findings and heads to the Sullivans' house. There she rings the doorbell and knocks, but the house seems desolated, and of course the door is open. She sees a photo of Collins and his supposed wife Amy. She and her look a lot alike. Collins shows up behind her. The CIA agent Sullivan was Collins' father, so he taught him the trick of the trade. With some magic words, he puts Jen to sleep. Wade's friend calls him and tells him about the fingerprints on the spoon. They belong to Julian Sullivan, but he now calls himself Collins, which is the cue for Wade to come to Jen's rescue. Jen wakes up in Collins' office. Wade calls her and sends some units her way. Collins tells her to sit down, and she does. Meanwhile, the police storm the building. Collins explains to her why this is happening to her. She is an exact copy of his wife, she even smells like her. Just as the police are about to break down the door, Collins leans over and tells her she can wake up now. She's not in his office. She is at Sullivan's residence. The police find the office empty and Wade makes sense of it all and drives to Sullivan's house. Jen looks around, unable to move. She recognizes the room and the music playing. She understands that her dreams were not dreams, they are Collins' memories with his wife. He is trying to implant Amy's memories into Jen and eventually replace her. The power of hypnosis. Colin tells her that he and Jen share the same wounds, the loss of his wife and her miscarriage, as he continues to make her up. He puts on her the same bracelet he gave his wife for their anniversary. Wade has made his way to the house. Just as Collins is about to kiss her, he hears the door shut. Collins forces Jen to hold on to the railing. Jen begs Wade to help her, but the door is locked, so the cat and mouse game begins, even though Wade is at a distinct disadvantage due to his injuries. Collins turns out the lights. Wade enters a room with flickering light from a projector. He sees an outline of Collins all around him and tries to shoot him, but fails. Jen tries her best to let go of the railing, and succeeds. Collins attacks Wade from behind with a crowbar, knocking him down and beating him up. When Jen comes into the picture as a rescuer, Collins tells her to sleep. Jen falls to the ground, but still barely conscious. She crawls for the gun, takes aim, and manages to get off one shot. A little later, Wade wakes her up and says Collins is gone and she's a good shot. Wade covers her with a blanket and hugs her. She'll be fine. I promise, my love. A flashback to Stella, putting a counter trigger on the phrase, my love. If Collins ever uses it, she'll ignore every single trigger he put in her head and will see the world around her for what it truly is. Jen realizes it's not Wade hugging her, but Collins. She picks up a plate and smashes it against Collins' head. She then finds Wade beaten up and bleeding. He tells her about a gun on his ankle, and she finally manages to finish Collins off. Turns out Jen was not a very good shot, she just grazed Wade. 1 month later, Jen is at her new job. She visits Brian every day at the hospital. She apologizes to him for what happened to them, and also that his tests are positive and he should wake up soon. Wade gets a promotion and Jen thanks him for everything and congratulates him. Wade presents her with a token of his appreciation. When she opens it outside, it's a CD, Better Sleep, Self-Hypnosis. She scoffs at the irony.